Guys, this is Michael here. Welcome to the Motor Show. It's a new dawn, it's a new day, and today we're going to go after the gigantic, bureaucratic, socialist, very, very authoritarian system known as Obamacare. And I'm going to go after the morality of the whole damn thing and why it's actually more morally just to get rid of this monstrosity, just completely outright get rid of it, than it is to either fix it or replace it. Right now we've got our politicians in office and they're trying to replace the healthcare bill. And just about the only thing I like about the replacement idea that was proposed was that it eliminated the mandate. Once the mandate's been eliminated, you see, this kind of makes things a little bit less authoritarian. But the whole idea behind Obamacare and the mandate was just absolutely unconstitutional, without a doubt. Unconstitutional. I mean, you have the government forcing you to pay for something that you may not necessarily want. How anybody can argue that that's okay, by any stretch at all, how anybody can argue this is absolutely absurd. So, there's been a lot of claims from the left. We got Bernie Sanders up on a podium saying that if you don't fix Obamacare and you repeal it, millions will be without insurance. Well, no shit, Bernie. Of course millions will be without insurance. Millions of people don't want the insurance, so them being without it is kind of like a victory. I don't see the problem here, you know? And the same idiot makes the claim, oh, well, you know, without Obamacare, thousands of people per year will begin to die off. Obamacare is keeping many people alive. Many people rely on Obamacare and the Republicans just don't care. You know, again, Obamacare is not any kind of saving light. It's not going to, let me put it this way, thousands of people die per year anyway. Thousands of people died per year when Obamacare was in place. It doesn't make a difference. I don't understand what that means. The mortality rate of the planet is 100%. Everything living on this planet dies eventually. So I don't understand what he means by that. I think he's trying to say that thousands more will die without Obamacare. But, you know, that's the funny thing about government and regulations and state power is that, you know, if you really want to help the poor out and you really want to do it at the expense of somebody who, you know, is to be blamed for this, then the best way to help the poor out is to eliminate all the damn regulations that have basically made it impossible for people to get into the medical industry without giving up a small fortune. I mean, it takes years to become a doctor. It takes thousands of dollars. These people go into debt. They're left with these gigantic holes to fill. They just gotta keep on making money to fill that hole and pay off that college debt. And the reality of the situation is, it's the government's fault that those debts have to exist. See, the government is the one who came along and put a bunch of regulations in place. And now that same government wants to come along and sell you a plan so that you can use their corrupt, broken system to get yourself fixed when you have an injury. So you don't have to give up an arm and a leg, you know, to fix the other arm and leg. These are the types of people that are trying to earn your trust and your dollar, trying to sell you this plan that basically dictates one of the most important aspects in your life, which is your health. I personally don't believe that the state has any business in the health industry. I believe that the free market is the way to go. You know, it wasn't very long ago that the free market is what controlled the healthcare system. That, you know, decent, affordable healthcare was out there so that the poor people could go and get healthcare. It didn't cost them all that much. And I'm not saying that health insurance is a terrible thing. I'm just saying that what the government's trying to sell us, or has been trying to sell us with Obamacare, is not really even insurance. It's just a mandate to be into their program. You know, it's really no different than the state eventually saying that you need to live here for sustainability reasons, and if you don't live there, it's going to go against the greater good for humanity. You know, that's the argument that's being put forth by my generation, is that this socialized medicine is for the greater good, that the rich owe us something. Well, they don't owe us anything. You know, it's the problem with socialism. It's the disconnect that my generation, one of the disconnects they don't fully understand, is that socialism doesn't respect property rights. You know, it's great for the people on the bottom, but for the people in the middle and the people on top who actually earn their living, earned their fortune, having to give up a percentage of it per month, per year, whatever, to the poor is not really fair at all. I mean, where's the incentive to be good at something then? My generation, they have a lot of weird disconnects. One of the things I really don't understand is their absolute trust in the state. They treat the state like it's some sort of holy entity that can do no wrong. Unless, of course, the Republicans are the ones running it. Then, of course, then it's evil and you can't trust it because Republicans, corporations are bad. And that's another thing. It's common knowledge that the state likes to grow. And the proof of this is all around us. You look at government programs, you look at how they only get bigger and how they always have different divisions that come along too. There's all sorts of bureaucracy that's introduced everywhere we look. And, you know, it never gets any better. Government taxes an awful lot, it takes an awful lot of money, and then it doesn't really do much with it. There's always waste everywhere. I mean, just look at the way something like the roads department is run. They always spend more money than they have to on something. They do a crappy job. They don't leave it for competition. You know, they don't let a little competitor come along and say that, oh, I could do a better job for less money. No, they spend a bunch of money, and then they make sure that, you know, next year that they'll spend just as much, if not more, because if they don't, then they don't get the same amount of money. And it kind of reminds me of that speech that Michael Douglas gave in Falling Down in that movie. It's very much the reality of the situation, that the government overspends and they're not very effective. So it's really weird that my generation trusts them so much, because, I mean, you look at it and they don't trust similar power structures, but they do trust the state. That's the thing I don't understand. You know, how can you trust... Okay, so like churches, for instance, they don't trust the church. They think the church has a bad motive. You know, they think the church is trying to control the world. But yet, somehow there's a disconnect here. They don't think that the government is trying to control the world. They don't see how the government is also trying to control everything. You know, the government wants power. The same can be said about corporations. My generation hates corporations, except for the ones that benefit them. You know, they love Amazon. They love to use Google. Google and Amazon are both very political on the side, and they do an awful lot of things that, you know, most people would not support, but they won't hear it. If you tell them that they're corrupt, they don't want to hear it. So anyway, they hate corporations like oil corporations. They don't trust them at all. Oh, they're just out to make money and exploit nature to do so. You know, that's what my generation will have you believe, and that's what we've been taught. And you can't tell them otherwise. You can try, but they just won't freaking listen to you. So basically, corporations are evil. You can't trust the corporations, but you can trust the state. You can't trust churches, but you can trust the state. The state, which is ran by people. Just like the church is ran by people, just like corporations are ran by people. And the state's ultimate goal is, like I said, to grow. It's a weird thing. I don't know why my generation thinks the state is in for the best interest of the people. I've got to make a delivery up here. I'll be right back, so hold that thought. Road here. So yeah, you know, there's a guy who's going to need some free healthcare in a moment. Free. So, you know, the thing about the state and morality is that it's quite obvious that they don't care about the poor as they claim to, especially the Democrats. I mean, if they really cared about the poor, you know, just like I was saying, they'd lift the regulations on some of these things. They'd make it a little easier to become a doctor because the costs for the system at hand right now is terrible. And a lot of leftists would argue that those regulations are necessary because, you know, without them, we can't trust that doctors will be good enough in today's high standards of medical practice. But that's a bunch of crap. I mean, if that was true, there wouldn't be any lawsuits right now. And last I checked, there's a lot more than there was at the time the free market was dictating everything. You know, another thing about the state and caring about the poor is that if they really care about the poor and they really care about children and things like that, if leftists really care about that sort of stuff, you know what they would address? The national debt. There wouldn't be a national debt if they actually cared. The national debt hurts us in almost every way you can think of. I mean, it hurts the value of our money. It hurts our productivity. It hurts the health industry as well. It finds its way in hurting the health industry. It makes things more expensive. It makes it so people's standard of living isn't as good, and then they get sick more often. And, you know, that's again, if they cared about the poor, there's other things they could address too, like food. You know, the food quality. We have pretty crappy quality food, but they allow it to happen. You know, they're not doing anything about it. I think they said it was schools eat worse than prisons do. You know, kids in school, and these are government schools. Government-run institution feeds your child crap. And then they tell you that healthcare is the single biggest concern for the American people, aside from all these BS environmental issues, which we'll get on topic for another day. But they claim that they care, and then yet they let the state get involved in everything and make it wildly inefficient. It's quite obvious they don't care about these things. So my argument against my generation is that the state is not your friend. We have to establish that the state is not a holy realm that can't be touched, okay? It's definitely up for scrutiny. That's the way this country was meant to be. Consequences are what are supposed to dictate our system. You know, we're supposed to be able to hold our government accountable when it does things that are wrong. And right now we don't have much accountability in this current state of things. We don't really have a way to hold our government accountable. So giving them more power over something as important as your health is absolutely absurd. And it doesn't really matter how you look at this, having the state involved, I mean, having Obamacare imposed by the state as it was, there was no way to escape it. They were involved in your life. You either were part of the program or you got fined every year, and they'll tax you out of house and home, or fine you out of house and home for this basic tax on life, is what it was. It's unconstitutional, no matter how you look at it. I'm going to say that again because, you know, that's, you want to talk about holy government documents, I'd say the Constitution is the holy government document that we need to be following, you know? So my solution, honestly, to fixing the healthcare situation is to remove the regulations, to let the free market dictate things. Thousands will not die every year from this sort of thing. I mean, yeah, there are some people that rely on this, and maybe we need to wean off these generations a little bit, but I don't really like that soft landing stuff because the grimy, greasy little swamp creature fingers of the state always has a way of basically turning that into a procrastination sort of routine. You know, oh, I'll get around to dropping the welfare state off eventually. You know, they never do. It just continues to expand. That's another thing I would say too, is that the welfare state is more proof that the government does not care about the poor or the next generations. That the welfare state is one of the single-handed worst things to have ever happened to this country. It is so destructive on so many levels. It's a topic for another day, but we need to end that, and we also need to end this idea that you need insurance. You know, people have survived thousands of years without government-ran healthcare. I don't think it's going to be that big of a deal if we get rid of this terrible plan right now. I'm pretty sure that people can find a way to survive without the state. See, this is the state's way of saying that they know best and that you can't run your life, that you can't plan for anything. You know, they do the same thing with retirement. They say that you need us to plan for your retirement because unforeseen consequences and things. Well, it's a crazy idea to think that you could pay into a system that, you know, you're paying into this system and it has dozens of employees to manage it. And then at the end of your working effective life, you're expected to get equal amount back out of the system, and the system needs to continue to float. That's absolutely absurd. It's creating something from nothing. I want to get on to a different point here. The Democrats are such a hypocritical party, aren't they? I'm not a big fan of the whole replace the Obamacare thing. I'm really not. I would rather just get rid of it because, as I've said before, it's really not a constitutional thing. But to be fair, the Republicans' new plan did eliminate the mandate, which means that people like me who don't want to be involved with this don't have to be involved in it. So this is why I will let this plan stand if it were to pass, is because the government isn't forcing you into something. Now, like it or hate it, millennials, anytime the government gets involved in something, it just is extremely inefficient, and this can be proven throughout history. But, you know, if you wanted to voluntarily get involved into a healthcare plan ran by the government, you see, that's okay. I can't say no to that. It's your choice at that point. The Republicans are trying to build this bill up, and the Democrats, as per usual, are pretending as though they're some sort of victim. They're pretending that the people have a right to see what the Republicans are writing, and that the Republicans are not being transparent, and that this is not fair, and it's unconstitutional, and blah, 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 blah. There's so many problems with these claims that the Democrats are making. For instance, first of all, the Republicans are being transparent. They're sharing what's going on. They're giving up limited drafts for the people to see. The Democrats just don't want to see it. And from what I've heard on the Republican side of things, the Democrats won't come to the table about anything. They don't want to work with the Republicans. So it's not that the Republicans are shutting them out, it's that they aren't going to work with the Republicans. So that's the first problem with that claim. The second problem with that claim, more to the point, is that even if that was true, even if the Republicans weren't willing to work with the Democrats, even if they were, sorry about that, even if they were not willing to reason with them or anything of the sort, and that they were going to release a plan without showing the public, which is what they're claiming that is going on, the problem with this is that, you know, it's amazing that they should talk. You know, it's amazing that they would point that out when they themselves have done the exact same damn thing. It's hysterical. Hang on a second. Sorry about that again. Got a little bit distracted. So yeah, the Democrats are doing the exact same damn thing. They've done the exact same damn thing. Who remembers the 2,200-page report, or a 2,200-page bill that Obamacare was, that nobody got to read? They only had a few days to read it, and then they passed it. They passed it without anybody really seeing it. And what was Nancy Pelosi's defense? What was it? I don't remember. What was it? Oh yeah, that you have to pass a bill before you can know what's in it. Who remembers that? I remember that. Do you guys remember that? Because I remember that. I mean, we could go get the clip if someone's going to argue with me. I think someone else brought that up to Nancy, and she just shrugged it off as though it never happened, and then filibuster changed the subject. It's hysterical how hypocritical these people are. They tell you that the American people have the right to see the law, and yet they don't show the law when they write it several years back. They tell you that we have a moral obligation to the people and that this needs to be passed now, that the people can't wait. They tell you that a law needs to be passed before you can see what's in it. And then they claim the Republicans are doing exactly what they did. And in fact, the Republicans aren't even actually doing that. I mean, you can't make this crap up. It's hysterical just how hypocritical these people are. I just don't get it. I mean, man, coming up to another delivery up here. So stick around, guys. I'll be right back. All right, guys. So got one more thing, and then my closing thought. So, you know, all these Democrats, they're railing against the Republicans, saying that healthcare is a right. You know, Bernie says that all the time. And it really doesn't make a lot of sense, because if you think about what they're saying that people have a right to a doctor's labor. You don't have a right to a doctor's labor. You know, you don't have a right to be able to use their services for something that they can't afford. You know, this is what these socialists do, is they convince the lesser informed people that they have rights that they don't have, and then people get mad when things fold up and when things can't sustain. You know, like medical practices, and they can't afford to continue keeping their doors open, and then you're only one stone's throw away from the government punishing you for going bankrupt. I mean, once that happens, you might as well just, you know, not become a doctor. You might as well just stay away from that whole thing, because, and believe it or not, this happens in other places around the world. It's happening in Venezuela. Recently there was some bakers that got arrested because they basically went bankrupt. The government claimed that they could have kept their doors open, and they were only doing this to create a unstable environment and make the government look bad, but it wasn't the case. They couldn't afford the government-regulated flour that they had to purchase. So this is an example where bureaucracy and the state is not a good thing. You know, we really don't need the state. We don't. We need some sort of understanding of rules. We do need some law and order, but we don't need this massive bureaucratic state as it exists right now. It's not a good thing. And this comes to my closing thoughts here, that, you know, humanity's survived for a very long time without government health care. They've survived for a very long time without government subsidies and without government housing and things like that. We don't need these things, okay? These are not entitlements, and they're not rights. They're things that we voted for or that we didn't vote for, we got fooled into, and it's not, you know, it's not a good thing. What we really need is a strong sense of family in this country. This is the solution to healthcare right here. We need a strong sense of family, ethics, and morals. These were things we used to have, and we don't have them anymore. And guess who's to blame for that? The state. Again, the state is the one that helped destroy the nuclear family. And, you know, it's funny, I met a Democrat in my life, I work with him, who actually told me that the state is to blame for killing the family. He even believes it. So if a Democrat can come around and see this point of view, you know, you guys got to be a little more open-minded. The state, they come in and they control schooling. They control all sorts of things like that, and they award things like divorce. You know, they make it an incentive for people not to get married. They give you benefits for not being married if you have children, things like that. These are things that destroy the nuclear family, and unfortunately, you know, that's what the state wants, because they want you to rely on them. This is kind of a double evil here, though, because it's not just the state, it is people too. The undereducated people that took advantage of these sorts of benefits are also to blame. You know, no offense, but if you're a welfare mom, it's not a good thing. I mean, in some cases there's nothing you can do, but in other cases, you know, there's people that just want to bleed the system dry, and they're the problem. They're helping to destroy the family, and they're destroying the morals and the ethics and the values. We all need to have these values instilled on us again, and the state doesn't teach it. It was the family unit that taught it, you know. These values keep us all on the same page with each other. They keep us understanding that property rights are important, that, you know, basic rights are important, but that healthcare is not a right. You don't have a right to someone else's labor. So, you know, the only way to fix this whole situation is, unfortunately, to do a lot of tearing down of what's in place. We need to take an honest look at ourselves and ask ourselves, are we the problem? Are we actually the problem? And this is a problem that my generation has, is that they can't do that. They don't like competition, they don't like things like losing, and they don't like admitting when they're wrong about something. And you know, if we don't fix this, there's not much hope for America. So anyway, those are some of my arguments against Obamacare. There's many more, and I'm sure if I went all day, I could come up with some more things. Definitely remember some of my older arguments against it, but those are some of my best points. If you like the show, you know, like, favorite, subscribe, that sort of thing. Comments down below are always welcome. Constructive criticisms, too. I know that I'm a bit amateur, so you don't really have to point that out, but if you want to, go right on ahead. You can follow me at Twitter. You can follow me on Twitter at motor_show 1776. That's motor in all caps _show 1776. Thanks for watching, guys. Thanks for taking the ride, and until next time, take it easy.